I'm Shannon.
And I'm Mark.
And this is Dirt Sailor, the podcast. Happy Throat Punch Thursday.
Well, happy Throat Punch Thursday.
How are you doing on this fine day?
Pretty good.
Glad to hear it.
Yeah.
Glad to hear it.
I was able to watch how intellectual my president is. Wrong term.
Is that the word you would use for what happened last Thursday?
Well, yes. Tongue in cheek. Houston,
we have a problem.
we have a big problem.
Yeah, I've seen some side-by-sides of him debating in 2019 versus him debating now. And you can see the big change.
Well, there's a big change, and they're saying that he was cooked up on gas or on drugs in 2019.
And now the drugs just aren't working.
They're just not working. Or I know you're going to dive into this, but how about conspiracy theory? This is exactly what whoever is running him behind the scenes
wants to happen.
Want it to happen so they can replace him before the convention.
Okay, but some states have certain laws against that, including the swing states.
I have those right here in front of me.
You have those right there.
I have those numbers in front of me.
And what do those numbers say?
Well, let me scroll to them. State laws and party rules on replacing a presidential nominee. The Democratic and Republican parties have their own processes for replacing a presidential or vice presidential nominee. Each state also has its own process and deadlines for ballot certification and printing. Given these deadlines, parties must also consider the election calendar if they seek to replace a candidate. There's three main phases. The three main phases of a presidential election determine which party rules, state rules, and federal laws come into play while attempting to replace a presidential candidate. The first phase takes place before the party's convention.
Okay, and I believe their convention is in, the Republican one is coming up.
Yes, theirs is August 19th through the 22nd.
That's the Democrat one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the convention will take place from August 19th to the 22nd. The Republican National Convention will take place July 15th through the 18th.
That's what I thought.
While neither party's nominee is official until delegates elect a candidate in a national convention, there are party rules and state laws that come into play if a party seeks to replace its presumptive nominee. Phase 1. Phase 2 takes place between the party's national nominating conventions and the general election, which will take place on November 5th, 2024.
Okay.
It is rare for a candidate to drop out of a race between his or her formal nomination at a convention and the general election. The last time a party replaced a candidate was 1972, when Democratic vice presidential nominee Thomas Eagleton withdrew after details about his mental health treatment.
Well, we look differently at mental health treatment now, so I wonder if that would have been different.
Yes.
So that's the last time that it happened.
Yes, 1972. So third phase, between the general election and the presidential inauguration, which will take place on January 20th, 2025. A president-elect has never withdrawn, died, or become incapacitated during this stage of an election. In 1872, however, Horace Greeley, who lost to Ulysses S. Grant in the general election, died between the election and the counting of the electoral votes.
So, oh, really?
Touch different.
Okay.
Electors initially allocated to Greeley voted for a variety of candidates. So that's how they can do it that way. Ballot access. So let's go by state. Here are the dates that you must have your candidate locked in by. Alabama, August 23rd. Alaska, September 1st. Arizona, August 9th. Arkansas, August 22nd. California, August 14th. Colorado, August 30th. And you can see where this is going. I'm not going to read all 50 because they're all pretty much about the same, August and September.
But some are before.
Georgia is July 9th. So, yes.
Some are before the nominee. Like the actual nomination has happened by the DNC. I heard early August on one of those.
I was going to say I didn't screenshot nor read or print every one of those. There are other dates that come into play, like you said. However, there has been cases where the DNC or the RNC has talked the state into modifying that rule.
Okay. Well, we had rule modification for 2020. I don't know how many of our listeners remember, but they, for instance, Pennsylvania being a big one, they had certain laws surrounding who can submit a mail-out ballot and return it. And they just said, we're just going to ignore that and do it for everyone.
We're going to do our own thing.
So do our own thing would not be a surprise.
Well, that's what's interesting is do your own thing is actually early voting starts in September.
Right. So one thing I dislike about early voting in 2020, when we had Biden, Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, who else was there? Bernie Sanders, and several others running for the Democrat nomination. Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar dropped out in the primary time frame, but dropped out the weekend before our California and other states, but our Tuesday election. How many times did they tell you to send your ballot in early, send it in early, send it in early, bubble it, get it out there? If you did that, you threw away your vote.
You absolutely threw away your vote.
And intentionally, you thought you were being intentional and you're doing it early, and you need to have time for mailing too. That wouldn't have been enough time for mailing. Waiting for them to drop out and then on Monday, mail it on Tuesday. You know, you don't have enough time to get it there. There's so many issues with the post office, no offense.
Yes, there's a lot of issues with the post office because it is a federal
Agency.
government agency,
Yes.
and they make mistakes on a regular basis. So...
And that's a different issue than what we're talking about now.
Yes.
Of course, what we're talking about now is Biden appearing to lack cognitive ability to maintain being the president. And they say that being the president ages you. Now, I don't know if it's like dog years for 1 year of presidency ages you like 7. But if you look at all of our presidents on day 1 versus their last day in office, understandably, they aged 4 to 8 years in real life. But if you look at them, man, it looks like life just hit them hard.
Well, yes, and there is a lot of power and responsibility with that position. Whether you want to deem it the most powerful job in the entire world or not, that's for Americans to decide. However, if it is the most powerful position and it is that rough on you, you know then that this man has cognitive reasoning issues. You know, you have run the whole litany of things down that he's had brain aneurysms, he's had surgeries, he is a plagiarist. I mean, no, that doesn't have anything to do with his cognitive reasoning.
Well, it does have something to do with his reasoning skills, but...
Yes. And we've gone into that. We can go into that too if you wanted to tail into this, but he, in my opinion, has never been the right man for the job. He lied his way to it, in a word, because he plagiarized, because he did a lot of things as he was progressing through the ranks at 50 years in office. Leave the corruption stuff aside, because we know they call them the crime family. They're all corrupt, every one of them. However, there's some dangerous people out there. It's dangerous times. And I put the responsibility straight on his wife, number 1, and his handlers, number 2. These people back there are so addicted to power that they'll even hold up Bernie, Weekend at Bernie's Place. For anybody that's seen the movie, it's quite interesting.
Sorry, there was a lady, and I want to say it was in Brazil, but I could be getting the country wrong, so no offense to Brazil if it wasn't Brazil, that she was trying to access a bank account of a man. She put him in a wheelchair and wheeled him to the bank. And he was dead. He was like laying over dead. He was dead. And she was trying to pick his hand up with a pin in it and sign at the bank. And they had video of it. And while Biden may not be dead, they are essentially picking up his hand and walking him to everything. If you looked after the debate, they gave the exit music. Trump went off one way. Jill Biden immediately marched right out to her husband. Like instantaneously, she's out there. And then she holds his hand And slowly, she's in front. She leads him down the stairs so he doesn't fall. And I believe, I'm going to get the quote wrong, but when she's congratulating him in front of, they've allowed like the other Democrats that were there for him that day, even though it wasn't a live studio audience, they were all waiting in the wings, and then they go give speeches. Good job, honey. You answered every question. It seriously sounded like she was congratulating a 5-year-old.
I say it was a
who had
kindergarten answer there.
Who had a test to get into first grade or something. Like, you know your colors. Congratulations.
You know the color blue.
You know the numbers 1 through 10.
Well, one of the issues that bothers me is all these folks that are claiming that, oh my God, this is the first we've ever seen of this. That's called gaslighting.
We have been gaslit as a nation for quite some time now.
And there should actually not only be Republicans and independents and non-voting people that are teed off, all the Democrats that thought that they were going to primaries and they were going around their country and voting for their nominee again, that they were not being told the truth.
And so to that, I felt misled and lied to when they swooped in and grabbed out Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar, because they were beating, well, at least Pete Buttigieg at the time and Bernie Sanders, they were beating Biden in 2020.
Right. And they didn't feel that he being Bernie, could beat Trump.
So, and then in this case, they have gaslit us for the last, I don't know how long, but let's just go to the last few weeks. When news organizations were showing videos of Biden seemingly getting lost in France, seemingly, not being able to figure out where he was going. They would show him getting out of a vehicle. He would stand out and he'd just kind of look around like, okay, where am I? What am I doing?
Deer in the headlight.
Deer in the headlights. And over, we were seeing deer in the headlights, deer in the headlights. He would wander off stage. They would have to redirect him. When he was doing a fundraiser, I believe it was in Los Angeles, President Obama had to grab his arm, and then you see him escorting out, hand behind the back of where he's going. And we had Karine Jean-Pierre say deep fakes, cheap fakes, liar, liar, pants on fire, never happened. Now we see him 90 minutes on CNN, very Biden-friendly, extraordinarily Biden-friendly, and Democrat-friendly. And they don't go with deep fakes and cheap fakes. Now they're just saying, well, you're not giving deference to a person who may have slowed down a little bit in life. That they're a little bit older.
Difference in slowing down and being completely stopped and going in reverse.
Yes. And so now they're off the deep fakes and cheap fakes. And to take it back even a little bit further, Robert Hur was hauled in front of Congress to answer for his essentially calling Biden a likable, feeble old man that they can't prosecute because he's too elderly and people will probably feel for him. And they're like, oh, you just made up things. That's not how he is. He's a hot shot. He's on the ball. Do you think this vindicates him?
Well, apparently he's not. And that's why the Republicans in the House of Representatives have sued DOJ to get a copy of the audio tape.
So this is a good example with Biden standing on stage. Sometimes you can't help it. I will say, regardless of age, if you stand with your mouth open, I've done that before.
Catch flies.
Sometimes, I've been accused of having RBF, resting B-word face. Sometimes you can't help your face.
I know.
Sometimes you can't help your face.
I know,
Sometimes you can't help that. But they practiced with him. And he's a practiced politician. He's 50 years practiced politician plus.
He's been a truck driver. I'm kidding. Go ahead.
But he's a practiced politician. He had a week. Why would he, a practiced politician, need a week to go up against a man that he's gone up against before, that he knows everything that he's going to do, with exception, I will say this time, that cutoff stopped both sides from talking over each other. It was great.
That might be something good to add into the debates.
I liked it.
Cutting the hot mics
I
off.
liked it because that was one thing that bugged me about Trump and others, because he's not the only one who did it. When they would just go on and on and on, and then it would be them talking over each other and all. I liked it. I liked it a lot. I think that should be required for every single debate going forward.
That's why there's a couple of news contributors on Fox that do what we're doing right now. They're also on video media, and they do podcasts, obviously, that I know someone that can't stand them because they absolutely do that. They ask a person a question that they've invited into their studio, and when the person starts answering the question, they do nothing but cut them off and badger them and
let the person answer.
let them
Absolutely.
answer the question.
And especially if you're going to have somebody on, they may say something that you disagree with, that you dislike. Now, if they're all of a sudden espousing some level of hatred and vitriol and cursing, yeah, you might need to stop that sort of thing. But if it's within the realm of what you ask them, I hate when they cut people off and don't let them answer.
It's very disrespectful, in my opinion.
It is. You don't really have you have a one-sided, what is that, a monologue? You don't really have a Q&A.
Yes.
You just have a monologue because
There's
you
no
don't want
back and
anyone
forth,
to
right.
interrupt. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting that the person that Robert Hur described is the person that we saw in
on
the
stage.
debate. And it is important now to hear, even if we don't hear it, obviously as a person of the public, I would love to hear it. Hear Biden answering the questions. It needs to be heard by the appropriate people, because they said they cut out ums and ahs and repetitive ands. So maybe there is an hour and a half of
So if he didn't have a problem, as arrogant and narcissistic as he is, he would actually be out on the stage right now defending himself, saying, hey, wait a minute. I had one bad day.
Right.
We're over it. Come August or when the next debate is, I'm going to whoop him. I am your presidential candidate. I am your current president. Get over me.
Yeah, the excuse that they gave was he had a cold.
Next day, he was sure fine
Mm-hmm.
at the rally. So I don't think he had a cold.
Yeah, he had a cold. So they asked Karine Jean-Pierre what medication he was on. She didn't say he was on cold pills. She didn't say he was taking NyQuil or Dayquil or something and it slowed him down that day. Because I don't know if you've recently taken Dayquil or NyQuil or other cold-related medications, they do slow you down. So if he had a cold and he didn't want to go out there maybe coughing and sneezing all over the place and whatever his cold was making him do, fever, maybe turn red, I don't know, they would have given him cold medication that could have slowed him down. But Karine Jean-Pierre says he wasn't on anything.
He's a feeble old man.
He is. He's 82, and in presidential years, what's that, 97?
He is beyond the abilities of the position. He tried to run and win the presidency in 3 decades. He won it technically when he was too old to run it.
Right, because he was a 80s candidate. He was an 80s candidate. That's when he got caught plagiarizing someone from the UK, I believe, overseas. Yes. And so he stepped down from that.
Well, him just being in France, like you said recently, with him having the issues there with staring out into outer space. And the one paratrooper's landing right in front of him, yet he's looking, off in a distance for...
So I will give credit. There were other paratroopers.
Yeah, and he may have been looking that direction. That's possible.
But then, if you're in the middle of a photo op, so here's my problem. If you're in the middle of a photo op, because clearly that's what it was. Those leaders weren't there because they wanted to congratulate paratroopers, no offense. They were there for the photo op. That's their commemoration, is we all get together, we stand behind the lead, person, and then we take photos. So he was in the middle of the photo op when he wandered off towards the other paratrooper. So it was like a shiny object, a squirrel. He went that way.
It was a squirrel moment.
And then they had to corral him back in.
Right, and that's what I was going to say, because not only was he there for the commemoration of D-Day, it was also part of the G7.
Yes.
7 wealthy nations that get together and talk about how they're going to spend our hard-earned tax money. Now they're even coming out and saying, hey, he was totally lost at the G7 meeting. He's the only leader that didn't have dinner with them. And they were having trouble with him focusing and keeping his front sight focus on what
they were trying to get done,
the task at hand.
They don't see each other that often. I know they do cameras and all of that stuff, but he gets to fly around a lot. I understand you're supposed to be awake at night. Oh, something happened in this nation and it's midnight our time. Guess what? You're getting up. It's 2:00 in the morning. Guess what? You're getting up. But they say he's good for 10 to 4.
6 hour day, 6 hours in a day.
Yep. And that includes lunch. So you got to carve out that lunchtime too. Mm-hmm. So it's 10 to 4, but it's not quite 6 hours.
So in here, let's put the partisan politics aside for a minute, because I don't believe in his politics. I personally, as a simple guy, think he's a fraud, just like his entire family. That's just my mindset, my thought process. However, like all these others are saying, he's a feeble old man. The Democratic Party should be ashamed of himself. His wife should be ashamed of herself for this elder abuse.
Yes.
You know, there's going to be other elections. Okay. You want to run him till November. Quit trying to chop Trump metaphorically at the knees with all of this lawsuit crud that's being made up.
Yes.
So to speak. Let the old man go to his beach house, get old, and die with dignity.
Yes. Okay. He wants to sit on the beach and eat ice cream. Let him sit on the beach and eat ice cream.
Caveat to that, he didn't even want to run when he ran for president.
No, his son badgered him into it.
Badgered him into running, while there's audio or video or both of his sister making the statement back then that he has dementia, the beginning stages of dementia. This is not good for him. So.
Okay, so if we see a Biden, so a couple things could happen. Biden still goes for it. They do not agree to another debate. They just say, you know what, he had a bad debate. Obama had a bad one, I think, in 2012. Oh, well, he can do the job.
Hold that thought, please.
Okay.
As soon as Obama made that statement that he had a bad debate,
people went back to look for it?
I didn't have to go back to look for it because I don't watch most debates, but I watched all of those with him and Mitt Romney. And I don't know what happened between the first and the second debate, but Romney absolutely eviscerated Biden.
You mean Obama?
Not Biden, Obama. I'm sorry. He eviscerated Obama. Fast forward to the second debate, Romney wasn't even there. He had no strength. He showed no power. It was like somebody got to him and told him,
back off.
Back off.
Well, there you go. So let's just say there's no second debate. Gets nominated in August. Gets to November. Gets elected. Let's just say vote blue no matter who wins it out. He's reelected. Do you think that we will see January 21st, 2025, Kamala Harris?
Yes, they will 25th Amendment him.
Once they're past point of no return, yes. Right? Once they can't be questioned.
Yes.
That's my thought, is they will get him to the 21st of January. And something that he said while he was running before the first time is that, they'll say I have some sickness or something, and then they'll yank me and I'll step down.
It's interesting because there's a couple guys that are in talk radio that have made that statement about Trump multiple times. And one of them made the statement day before yesterday, as a matter of fact, that Trump needs to hire more security and put more people around him.
Oh, that they'll knock him off? They'll poison his food?
Fear for his life. Yeah. And that would be my fear. You know, I was thinking about all the things I said positive about Tulsi Gabbard last week, and a week before that, and a week before that, and many, many months before that. She would be the ultimate swamp drainer. Okay, I would put her in a position to go after and whack all those positions and put them in little rooms and say, you're still hired here, you can stay here. Just sit and answer the phone. However, I would, if I was her, have somebody drinking my water for me before I drink
Testing
it.
my food.
And testing my food.
Yeah.
And making sure I don't go on any plane rides that I don't have to that are other than military planes that have some of these people on the airplane.
On it with
me.
her. Yeah.
See, and I
invite them every time you go somewhere.
Yes, and I would take, honestly, because this is the way these 3-letter acronym companies work, CIA, NSA, they will knock you off.
Yes,
period.
the alphabet agency.
We've seen the alphabet agency.
We've done it throughout the world.
Yeah, so I would take one of the biggest ones that I know is the deep state. That person would travel with me every single road trip.
Everywhere you go.
100% air, land, sea, or bicycle.
And the claim is she is still on the short list.
Yes.
That's
she is. That's why I'm thinking there might potentially be a zinger that everybody's thinking it's going to be so-and-so
Tim
and so-and-so
Scott
and so-and-so.
or Marco Rubio.
And it's weird that she's always
Mr.
been
North
on the
Dakota.
short list,
Yeah.
but every time they put up the pictures, she's not there in the top 10.
No.
I'm thinking, okay, there's something going on here. Either he has something else planned for her, which is help drain the swamp, because she started talking about that a lot recently too, or she's really his pick.
I'll nominate you to a cabinet level position
Yes.
and you're going to clean house.
And you're
I could see her still.
Yeah.
There you go. I think that she would be great. As much as there were things that I didn't like and I don't currently like about Nikki Haley, as an ambassador to the UN, she did her job.
Well, she was lights out. Lights out.
She did her job.
See, and we saw a lot of the fake hate that politicians do when she was running for president too. And I know she didn't want to say the things about him that she did, but that's the way, quote, a politician is. You read everything about their definition in the dictionary, encyclopedia, whatever. This is the way they do things.
That's the way you work.
And they were probably talking on the phone on a regular basis. Hey, go a little easier on me. Don't call me this. Don't call me that.
Try this, try that.
Yeah.
Why don't you say I was X, Y, and Z? Like giving each other pointers. They probably give each other pointers on how to target me, because then I know how I already have a way to turn it around. So why don't you say this? You'll sound good. And I wouldn't be surprised if
stranger things have happened in that avenue. So I know you know.
I know what?
I have it in front of me, but I want you to tell me so you can tell them, because I know a lot of people don't know.
I feel put on the spot now.
No matter who the nominee is on both sides, on both tickets, do they win the presidency off the popular vote?
No. It's off the Electoral College. So
Yes.
something that our founders did way back when is they decided we were not going to be a true democracy when we elect our president. We are not a true democracy. It's not a popular vote. And they foresaw that certain states could basically take over other states if we allowed a strictly popular vote. And it's for president that we don't have a popular vote. If you look at who your senator ends up being, both of them, that's based on a popular vote of your state. If you look at your House of Representatives, that's based on a popular vote of your local voting area, not your whole state, of your district. President is the one that we do not have a popular vote. And if we did, California, not all of California, just take certain areas of California with our population, how big we are. And with how big we are, California, New York, and a few other states could tell more than 30 states what they're going to do with you, so to speak.
Yes.
So with the president, it is not based on a popular vote. That helps decide how many of the electors they get. Anyway, off soapbox.
That's perfect. So let me read a couple paragraphs to you on how is it possible for the electoral vote to produce a different result than the national popular vote. It is important to remember that the president is not chosen by a national popular vote. The Electoral College vote totals determine the winner, not the statistical plurality or majority a candidate may have in the national popular vote totals. electoral votes are awarded on the basis of the popular vote in each state.
Yes.
So you basically explained it correctly. And 48 out of 50 states award electoral votes on a winner-take-all basis.
I believe Maine and Nebraska are the two that go Splitsville.
Yes. For example, all 54 of California's electoral votes go to the winner, since you mentioned California, of the state election, even if the margin of victory is only 50.1% to 49.9%.
They get winner take all.
Winner takes all. So you're correct. That is how a president and vice president is elected.
So imagine if California, everybody loved California so much that 300 million people decided to live in California. And in the 49 other states that house the other 30 million people that decided to live in the United States. Based on popular vote alone, if we solely went popular across all of the United States, it would be California that would be telling every other state what to do all of the time.
100% of the time. So I understand that there's 50% of the population, or maybe 30% now, that still likes Biden. And I don't want him to continue to run because I think his health dictates that he should pull out. However, we have had open primaries, closed primaries, semi-closed primaries, and we have had caucuses to determine if he is going to be the DNC nominee.
Yes.
So then if you pull him now,
everyone who had the opportunity to select their person has now been...
You are disenfranchising potentially 50 million people.
Yeah.
So that's why if this was a calculated bait and switch by the DNC or the Obamas or the Clintons or whoever is running the show because of his health, they all should somehow be held to account and never be allowed to be in politics ever again or something.
But you know that wouldn't happen.
No, I know it doesn't. That's speaking rhetorically, and that kind of stuff never happens.
So going back to alphabet agencies and
ABC. Oh, I'm sorry.
I know we talked about whether they would knock somebody off to have a way, we don't like what they're doing, knock them off or whatnot. But let's talk about the other things that they have done and members of other alphabet agencies, what they've done to help sway elections that we know about. And that is recent history. So the CIA interfered with the 2020 election by collaborating with the Biden campaign to discredit the Hunter Biden laptop story. It was, from my understanding, the Biden campaign that authored the letter and then got the signatories, got the people to sign on, got all the signatures. And some were actively working for acronymed agencies.
Minimum of 3, yes.
And so according to a congressional report released and recently, and then a former CIA deputy director admitted to Congress during the investigation that it was inappropriate for a currently serving staff officer or contractor to be involved in the political process. But they were involved in the political process.
Wish I remember the law, but there's a USC blah, 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 blah that prohibits them from doing
U.S.
that.
Code, yes. And former intelligence officials, 51 of the former intelligence officials, or current and former, signed a letter labeling the reports on Hunter Biden's laptop as Russian disinformation just before an election. And with current Secretary of State Anthony Blinken allegedly involved in coordinating this narrative for political purposes. So tell me they're not involved. We know that they're involved. We know that members of the organizations are involved. We know that high-level officials are involved. We know that the politicians, their election side, they try to say it's separate, that the group that's helping to elect them and the group that's working for them are two different groups, but they're coordinating.
Yes, and even, I wish I could remember which one it was. It was either Snowden or Julian Assange. Trump's CIA chief was putting together a package to have him killed. I just don't remember which one it was, whether it was
Assange.
It
I thought
must
it
have
was
been-
Assange.
It may have been Julian Assange. But there you go. Here's a 3-letter agency plotting to kill somebody.
Yes, and they never charged him
And they would have to do that.
until
Right.
recently.
They would have to do that on foreign land.
Yes, all of his political happenings, everything that was going on with him, they didn't charge him until very recently. So he was essentially held up hostage without charges.
12 years
Something like that.
in an embassy. That's crazy.
And so if you look at what we did to go after Osama bin Laden. I'm not saying it wasn't good to go after him. Don't get me wrong, although won't get into that backstory. But Obama gave the green light once they found him, but they found him in Pakistan, and I don't believe they had Pakistani permission to go into this foreign country to send our operatives in there to take him out.
And that's why all of SEAL Team 6 and all the operators that went in to extract him, kill him, whatever they were going to do, were not in there as U.S. military members. They all raised their hand and swore an oath to the CIA. So they became operators that are protected under DARPA law, that they can operate in companies that we don't have set agreements with.
Yes. So don't tell me we're not willing to do things.
And I learned that from a former CIA agent that gave up the information
as to how they were able to
Yes.
do that.
Yes.
And if you look at, of course now his name would escape me, but Obama gave the green light to have him taken out by drone, and he was a U.S. citizen.
Yes.
Was it Anwar?
He had dual citizenship.
Yes.
And I actually talked about that with some coworkers today. And I don't know if you're going to go into the Supreme Court decision today. However, that will be part of what I would like to say about that, because these senators and congressmen and women that are up in arms should be very happy that the decision went the way it did, because they could go arrest Barack Hussein Obama, charge him for
murdering a U.S. citizen
without due process.
Yes.
And I think he knew that, and I think they all knew it. And they're actually behind the scenes very happy that this case ended the way it did.
So that is where I wanted to go, and that was the segue that I was taking, was we now have a decision that says not that the president has absolute immunity, but the president has immunity from official acts while they are president, from kind of the acts that are around the outside that may be slightly official or related to their official acts, kind of a gray area. And then there's no immunity for unofficial, like completely outside their purview, has nothing to do with their job. So if a president walked up and committed spousal abuse, that's not a part of their job. They would not be protected if they did that. If they got mad because one of their workers posted the wrong video clip to Twitter and it made them look bad and they shot them point blank and said, "You suck," would not be included. So they did not say, because that was something that came out, they just said that the president now has carte blanche to do whatever they want, any illegal act all the time. That is not what the decision said. It had to do with your official duties. So one could argue with Obama that stopping a terrorist, even if that terrorist is a U.S. citizen, is within
his
or circling the purview.
Yes.
Although I would think that if they said no, then they could charge him.
Well, I wonder if just by the way we drone strike people now.
Like it's nothing.
Right. If it's not a crime every time.
Right.
Because we're droning people without their due process.
Right. And how many, oops, we got it wrong. Oh, well, that kind of sucks. Where's the next one going?
Uh-huh. Next target.
Yeah. So it is quite interesting, some of the decisions that have now come out, because we're in July, they're going into recess, all of these decisions coming out. Now they kicked back the decision to a lower court for the Trump immunity, saying you need to sift through all of these acts and you need to figure out which ones encompassed his official duties, encompassed the outskirts of his official duties, and which ones were absolutely outside of official duties. Drop all the ones that aren't, that were a part of official duties, and then you continue on. They didn't say that it's dead in the water.
Right.
So, for example, telling someone in your administration to go investigate whether there's mail-out ballot fraud or whether there was voter election integrity issues kind of sounds like that's within his purview.
Yeah. I mean,
So-
it only, number one, some of his attorneys, I'm sure, like, what's her face?
Alina
Sidney
something.
Powell. No, Sidney Powell.
Yes.
Somebody like her's bending his ear saying, hey, we think we see fraud here. And he's saying, well, I was up at 9 o'clock at night by 500,000 votes and there was only 400,000 left to count. Go find me
The
the
100,
votes.
where are the missing ones?
Go find them,
happened?
however he phrased that.
Yes.
That should all be within his jurisdiction, and that's should be attorney-client privilege anyway. So when he makes conversations like that, that should all be protected under that umbrella.
Except I will say, if they were saying, hey, we're investigating this and X, Y, and Z, and if they told him something completely illegal or untruthful, they've already gone after Sidney Powell. Rudy Giuliani has lost his law license. He's suspended. So if your attorney is giving you bad advice and you followed it, that you thought you were acting completely within your lawful purview, what happens?
Exactly. Don't
Yeah.
know. But that's why they go through the court systems and they hash this out and they figure it out. You don't have a bunch of Democratic operatives jump in there and say, no matter what he's done, prosecute him because we don't want him in office again.
Yes.
And I'm getting tired of hearing, sorry, I got to go on my own little soapbox. I'm tired of hearing a big portion of the population come out and say, oh my God, you cannot put him back in the office. It's our democracy.
Oh, well, it's the end of the world
It's
as we
the
know
end
it.
of the world. Well, wait a minute. And I've said this before. There's almost 70 million people that voted for him. He's got a lot more behind him now. If he was a tyrannical dictator, he would send out a mass communique through his Truth Social to all of his people. Let's go take the White House now. We
Right,
don't
why
have
wait?
to wait for November.
Why would a dictator wait for a stupid
why
election?
wait for November?
That sounds silly.
It's
Why would a dictator wait
Yeah.
for a silly little election? They wouldn't.
He's not, just like I knew, because I'm a simple guy, the Russia collusion thing, I knew it was fake from the beginning because the guy has been doing business and trying to do business worldwide his entire adult business life. I guarantee you the CIA, FBI, NSA, HUD, all the above, have a dossier on him a block long, and they've followed all of his moves for 40 years. Him and his dad.
Yes.
Just saying. So you're talking about the Supreme Court. Let me scan back a couple pages first.
Sounds good.
When was the Supreme Court established?
I do not recall the date.
1789.
I do recall that originally they were like circuit judges that had to ride and make decisions and stuff like that. And it wasn't until later that they actually became a more permanent sitting body.
Yes, their very first assembly was 1790, and then it started getting good from there. So, crazy thing is, do you know how many cases are presented to the court every year?
I imagine thousands.
Yeah, I was surprised. 5,000 to 7,000.
Okay.
How many do they actually hear?
I'm going to venture a guess of somewhere between 200 and 300.
Nope.
Ooh,
75 to 85.
really?
That's it.
Wow.
It's amazing. I
Oh,
just
that
thought
they
was-
actually select to hear.
They
and
actually select to hear,
okay.
and they let the lawyers go up and do their little lawyer thing, and then they make a decision. Or they kick it back to the lower courts or back
Okay.
to the appellate court.
So my thought is that some of not making a decision is the decision itself, because if they don't take it, then whatever the lower court ruled stands. So not taking a case, there could be reasons behind not taking it, but we did have a few big ones that overturned some prior precedent, like the Chevron decision. That
Yes.
one's now overturned.
There was like 12 major decisions in the last recent memory
Mhm.
that were actually really big ones.
Yeah, I believe the Chevron decision, the one that came out that basically overturned the past 40 years, is that they it's dialing back government overreach, which I can appreciate.
You know what I found amazing too is I looked up all of the chief justices from the very first one till present. And it's amazing how liberal the court was for so many years. And the conservatives actually only gained the upper hand during the Rehnquist court, which was 1986 to 2005. So from
Okay.
then till now, it's basically been a more conservative court than it was previous back to 18 whatever.
Yeah. That's interesting how liberal interpretation. So that's one thing that really bothers me about the Supreme Court is you would think that the interpretation were just setting people to make sure that you are following the intent of whatever law is there, that you're not trying to overreach and it doesn't run afoul of the Constitution.
Yes, and reading some of the past cases, especially when there was slavery in the country and there was free states and such, there was a couple court cases that were pretty pathetic.
They were. And it's funny. So the Chevron Doctrine, some are coming out and saying that, so there's a principle within the court that you don't undo past precedents, that it doesn't look good for the court if if you switch from a conservative to a liberal court and you flip flop, you don't take up a case that will swap precedent.
Right.
While that is there, I will say that if we kept with that precedent, we would still have separate but equal, because that was on the books first.
Yes.
That was a Supreme Court decision. The Dred Scott decision.
Dred Scott was the slave. Well, he wasn't a slave. He was a free black man living in a free state, and he sued, and it went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled against him, saying that he didn't have standing because
to be before the court. I do know one of our first precedents for slavery on keeping essentially lifetime slavery was brought up by an African American gentleman who owned slaves and wanted to keep one of his slaves a slave for life. And that's where the bad precedent, in my opinion. So yeah, we want to overturn that.
So basically what that tells you is, even though there's this many justices,
Yes.
yeah, they're human. Human factors come into play, even though they say they're supposed to go strictly after Constitution and what the law says. However,
Well,
their
some are like, it's a
political- yes,
living constitution.
their political leanings and such still come into play, and what the current wind or the way the flag's blowing in America at the time helps determine their decisions, I think.
It does, because some of the stuff that they come up with, if you look at their either affirming the decision or if they are overturning whatever the lower court said, and you'll have 6 justices said this and 3 said that, or it's 8-1 or 7-2, and some of them will write concurrent decisions, but they got there a different way. So they'll say, yeah, I agree with the overall result, however I don't agree with how you arrived at that determination. And it's interesting to me when we get a case where they're like, no, you can't. 3 of them will say one thing and 6 of them will say another. And then our Congress will use that as proof positive that we need to rein in the Supreme Court, or we need to swamp them with a whole bunch of nominees, or we need to shackle them with laws created by Congress. And it's like, okay, you're supposed to be separation of powers. And you're saying you didn't do what I wanted you to do, therefore, I want to upend you.
Sounds like AOC.
That is AOC.
Yeah.
She wants to impeach. She wants to overturn. She wants to him and ha.
Then the Speaker of the House is equivalent, the junior guy or the
Hakeem
minority,
Jeffries.
wants to try to do a constitutional amendment that they can't do what they just did. Well, wait a minute. We're not going to do a constitutional convention. 75% of the people are not going to vote for this. They need to take their lumps and move on, because a lot of the decisions that were before this one we didn't like. But I don't see us throwing tantrums for people that supposedly are in lockstep. They are in lockstep, but there's something shaking loose up here because they lose their minds.
Yes.
And they incite people to go out and cause riots and such. Not
Yes.
Trump and not the, quote, MAGA people. I only see it on one side. And when MAGA people, quote, do go out and riot and such, guess what? They turn out to not be MAGA people. They're plants. And they've stirred people's emotions up to the point where their adrenaline flows to where they can't stop. So, I don't know. Just a rambling thought.
I remember there being threats against the lives of our Supreme Court justices, one in particular, and they were still encouraging people to march on their doorsteps, to go to their houses. I mean, they're not saying march on the Supreme Court. They're not saying to go picket. They're saying go up to their house and make sure that they can't live a life.
Yeah, go
peace
disrupt their life, go
forever.
Disrupt their wives, their husbands, their children.
Because then you want, to me, that says you're willing to beat somebody into submission regardless of what's lawful.
Just like what happened during the House softball game or baseball game a few years ago when Representative Scalise was shot. It was a person that was listening to others banter, and the person had mental issues and acted out, and then Congressman Scalise almost lost his life. Okay, they got to knock that stuff off.
100% of the time. So let's bring it back to California. Good old Gavin Newsom.
You gonna get on the Newsom train for president?
Yeah, no. Newsom. Bleh. No Newsom.
Worst state in the union?
Yes.
No, thank you.
Unfortunately, we live here, but yeah. So since Newsom has taken office as governor, we've seen billions of dollars go poof. Whether it was for schools, homelessness, he can't account for any of the money spent on homelessness. We've seen record dollars go to our train to nowhere.
They can account for it. They're just not going to let you see it.
Yeah. So when elected, he moved to Sacramento. That's where our capital is. That's where they hold office hours, have meetings, all of that. Well, he's decided to move to Marin County.
Marin County, yes.
Marin County. He's decided to send his daughter to private school. This private school, the Branson School, costs $60,000 a year. His daughter is 14, so if it's 4 years of high school, that's $240,000
plus uniforms.
I don't begrudge him for having money. His family had money outside of him being. That's what money people like to do. They like to become politicians.
I don't
and tell
begrudge him for
everybody else.
having money if him and the family earned it
Lawfully.
honestly.
Yes, and they don't. Aunt Nancy and his uncle, earning that money and family
Best
money.
stock traders in the world.
He has helped, along with our elected representatives, they've helped to decimate our school system. Everything that he did during COVID, all of the shutdowns, the learning loss, the lack of help, everything that they do to pour money in also is going to ridiculous things that don't really matter. I don't care. I'm sorry, I'm going to say I don't care about your gender studies for third graders. I don't care that you want to have every alphabet letter out there for description and spending the whole month telling people what gender identity is. It doesn't matter if you can't read, if you can't write, and you can't do math. And guess what? California testing, I know tests aren't 100% the way to see how people are doing, but it's one of the metrics, is abysmal. And it's
very,
worse
very poor
than it was before. So he is saying that he doesn't trust the school system to educate his daughter, so much so that he is willing to spend $60,000 a year to send her to a private school that can better educate her. Why do we want a leader that doesn't even want his kids in public school?
I don't. In my opinion, here's another one that I say, I use this word not lightly. He's another fraud, just like his aunt and his uncle. He had no business running the city of San Francisco. He ran that into the ground. Now he took a state model and his college degree, which I'm sure he did when he did his thesis. It was probably on homeless or how to run a state or whatever. You cannot take those and turn them into practical application, and they work like 0.01% of the time. And if he is propelled into the national spotlight and somehow gets elected, we have
our country is going to go
the way of California, 100%.
Yeah, and I look at it and don't take what I said as bashing the topics of gender identity and gender studies. I don't think it's appropriate for the grade level. If as a college major you want to take this, if as a high schooler you have electives that you want to do, that's great. But we are taking time out of the classroom when kids can't read, kids can't do math. And we're spending it on all of these other extra items.
You're right. It's the sum total of the parts. You educate your kids first. You make sure that our roads are safe. You make sure the water is safe to drink. You make sure that everybody can find a job because we have an economy that's kicking. Then you throw all the other stuff in there. You want to do your gender studies, you do them. High school,
you want to do it as an extracurricular. Yes. You want to do, there are kids who take college level courses while they're in high school. Go get it done. You want to do it on your own. I am a proponent of educating yourself outside of the educational institutions. Do it. Absolutely. Learn to your heart's content. But when we have 180 days to help get kids grade level reading, and we have fourth graders that can't read, we have fifth graders that can't read, we have high schoolers that they get to their senior year of high school and they still can't
read.
And we're not talking like, oh, they're not reading on grade level because they don't like to read. No, we're talking like second grade level, third grade level. They can't blend ladder. They can't sound things out. We have a problem. And Gavin Newsom obviously doesn't trust our school system enough to educate his children.
So he should be one of the biggest proponents of school vouchers.
Right. That you should be able to send your kids where they will get the best education.
It's a do for thee, not for me. Is that how it goes? Or do for me, not for the, however.
Yeah, good for it's
me,
good for the,
not for the, yeah. Anyway,
I
always spin that backwards and forwards and sideways.
Yeah, do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, the basic point is, they will do for them, but they don't want to do for you. And they want to spend your money trying to do for everybody that they do wrong.
Yes.
And this should be the perfect case study and the perfect model. And you and I always talk about, hey, we need to, if we're going to try this with homeless, let's find a state, let's do a model. You have a model. He's run it for 2 terms. He's run it into the ground. Yeah, how's that working for you now?
Yes.
You don't want to do that in all 50 states across the board, and you don't want him having his finger on the button for sure. And I agree with some smart young man that we had dinner with the other night, a.k.a. your husband. Businessmen should be the ones in charge, or as close to being in those leadership roles as possible. It's just like Buttigieg. What is his title?
He's Transportation Secretary.
Yes. What experience did he have prior to being appointed because he backed out of the race in the transportation industry? 0.
Yeah, I think he said he likes to ride trains or something crazy.
Something silly.
I like airplanes. I like transportation.
So you need somebody that knows how to run that business. You need somebody that knows how to build things. Not, oh, well, this is graft. Here's my buddy. Give him a job.
Right.
You got to stop doing that. Because guess what position you get in?
Done.
Exactly where we're at right now.
Yes.
This has been a podcast produced and edited by the Dirt Sailor Duo. Mark and Shannon are a father-daughter team who both served in the United States Navy. This production is protected by copyright laws. Until next time, anchors away.